place of personal knowledge, but he says really what it is that we miss them. It's a sense of loss for the people who are still here. That's really what the pain is about. And I think for the last 8 years, there was a lot of pain for all of us, missing the parts of Saba that we didn't have anymore. In the first little while after his accident, we were doing renovations in the house, and there were so many times that I really reached for the phone to ask Abba what he thought I should do. And to a certain extent, you get used to not being able to talk to him and ask him his opinion, but at another extent, you never really can. And so I think part of this year's catharsis for everybody is the knowledge that he's not coming back. And that yes, I'm amazing bring the family back together again, but that we never had a world without him. I was thinking for quite a while about what to talk about today, and in the course of us being together for the Siyum, we had different nuschaot that were said by various members of the family. And it finally occurred to me what about Abba it was that I thought would be worth mentioning today. There's 2 themes in Judaism that seemingly contradict each other. One is Hillel says, I'll take up the tzibur. The person has to be joined together with the public. And the other is the pasuk in Mishlei, Shema b'ni Musa avicha v'atita v'tarasim. The person has to remember what they learned at home. And Donnie said what our cousin Rafi said, that we were raised here, and yet the family somehow turned out to become the Torah mitzvahs. So I think that's completely a credit to our parents, Ima, Abba Ol Shalom, that gave us a way of living life which could be performed really by yourselves. And Yiddishkeit has a piece of it that's like that. There's a piece of Judaism that can be performed without anybody else. And to a great extent, that's maybe the most important part of Yiddishkeit. The most important parts are not parts that are performed in shul, not the parts that are performed in public, they're the parts that are performed at home. And the only way we know how to do them is by watching what we learned at home. And for the people who are new to Judaism, it's a challenge, because they didn't have someone to teach them these things. But for us, my father-in-law always says, you can tell someone who's raised in an Orthodox home by the way they wash the motzi. He says they do it automatically. They've been doing it since they're babies. And so they do it, it's like second nature to them. He says if you watch someone who washes, who was not raised religious, he says, you see, they do it deliberately. They think it through. They have in mind the whole time exactly the way to do it correctly. But it's not something that's inborn. And what we saw from Abba, who came from a long line of people who were not educated in yeshivas. Moshe and I were in Frankfurt, and we saw his great-grandfather's tombstone. He died in 1859, and it could have been Opaz. The things that it said on it, Ish Tam V'Yashar, Nasav and Nasam Ve'amuna, he was an honest man, he was a straight man, he dealt with others carefully and honestly. Those were the watchwords of Popol V'Shalom and Oma, and those were Abba's ways, and he taught them to us. Each little bit about what it means to be a good person, he taught it. And he didn't teach it in a book, or teach it in school, or teach it behind a podium. He taught it by doing. And that's what everybody else said today. He's a doer. And that part of what Abba represented to us, I think, is to a great extent why he had the bracha and hatzlacha that he did in raising the family the way that he did. The other half of it, which, like I said, might be not the important part, but nevertheless, the public part of Yiddishkeit is al tifresh min hatzibur. The person has to be part of the public. So the Tiferet Yisrael gives a bunch of different reasons for what that means. So he says the first reason is, he says that when the tzibur makes a minhag, and you're part of that tzibur, so you have to follow that minhag. So my first recoil from hearing the Kaddish being said with a Nusach Sfard extra few lines, and Baruch Hashem L'olam V'amein not being said in Ma'ariv, and each one of these things that I heard, the truth is those are the right. Each one of those are part of the nusach of the community that each one of us joined, and therefore it's appropriate. And it's about to rain, so I'm gonna finish. But the point is that Abba did it that way. If we grew up in a Russian minhag shul, so we did things the way that the shul did them, and that was whatever the public way of doing things was. That's the way that we did them, and I think that that's also a very important lesson. And I think with those two things together, it's possible for a person to live a dedicated life. On the one hand, doing things the way that your parents always did them. On the other hand, knowing that if you join a community, you must join a community, and you have to join them with full heart. Okay, we should go before it rains.
Partner.
We're going to say a mole, and we're going to say Kaddish.